Hello Toastmasters, welcome guests. How many of you believe what you see and what you think throughout your life? How many of you actually believe that the events happening in the news and media today are really happening for what it is? What about history? Did the events happen in the last 6,000 years of human history actually happen, or is it really a tale written by whoever is in charge? So before we get into that, let's look at this picture really quick. So we want to see which tower appears to be leaning more. The right one. Okay. But if we were to actually take a ruler, if we have one, and just measure the angle right here, it's actually exactly the same. If I were to block this picture here versus now, does that change how you perceive both towers? Amazing, isn't it? So kind of, and what do you see here? Anya, what do you see?
I see pieces of a dog.
Pieces of a dog. Okay, Al? What do you see?
I just see black spots on white
Black spots. Okay. Todd, what do you see?
Same.
Spots in the
Just
background.
Spots on background.
Glenn, what do you see?
I see a spaghetti sandwich from Subway.
Are you smoking something that you're not going to show us?
I see a guy on a horse.
You see a guy on a horse. In fact, this is actually, it is a horse. Okay? But the funny thing is that once we tell you that it is a rider on a horse, can you get that image out of your head? Can you see that dog again? You can't. Because your brain already mapped out, oh, that's a horse and a rider. You can't, because it's hard to go back to just seeing black spots on a white background. That's called perception right here. And of course, how we perceive reality is simply a sum of our own personal experiences. So how we look at the picture on the left is totally different if we just change the angle slightly to the right. That's how it works. And even men and women perceive colors differently. This is how we see it. I think most of us do. And this is how most women tend to see things. Not just color, but pretty much almost anything you can imagine. We're not keeping it simple. Alright, so a little quick test here. When you see this picture of this guy right here, what's going on in your head?
Party.
What was personality?
Outline.
Outgoing?
Happy.
And anything else goes in your mind when you look at this picture? Okay.
Miami.
Anything else, Diane?
Inherited personality.
Inherited. Andy?
It's partying in Miami.
Part of Miami. Okay,
It's
great.
from Miami.
Well, what do you think he does for a living?
Basketball.
Basketball. Okay. Anything else?
School.
School.
In school.
In school. A student. Okay. Mars? What's your perception of this guy about his occupation?
Music.
Music? Okay. What kind of music?
DJ.
DJ? What kind of music?
Just party music.
Party music? Okay. Good. He's actually a staff sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps. He's one of my best friends also. Sergeant Obolos Hall. We were friends for about last year or so. So a lot of perceptions go on in your head about what he does for a living. You know, or who he is alters our reality on some people. Okay, go ahead. Anybody want to take a guess at this guy? What does he do for a living? At Mars, don't say anything.
Software programmer.
Yeah.
Software programmer. Al.
I don't know.
Jim?
I try not to judge.
Personality. You don't want to judge people. Good. Okay, good. Anybody else from the side? Who is he? What is his personality like? Don't say anything, Mars.
He's a scientist at a biotech company.
Biotech company. Okay. What software biotech company?
I would think he's an artist.
He's actually a kettlebell instructor and an acupuncturist up in Santa Monica. He teaches exercise. He's actually a Chinese medicine doctor. Dr. Mark Chang is his name. And he's also a very well-respected in the fitness and rehab field as well. So that totally changes the way you look at this guy right now. Just keep in mind that. Go ahead. And this is the kind of stuff that our perception about people influences on events that we have today. Like the event with the murder of Trayvon, for instance. How we perceive people affects our thoughts, and our thoughts affects our actions. In fact, our perceptions on body is very different, even in our lifetimes. If you were a young woman in the 1960s and early, up to about 1983, that was considered attractive. That was like a sex symbol back in the day. Anybody recognize the guy on the left?
Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, some of you guys are drawing a blank here. Okay, yeah. But nowadays, the ideal male figure is more like this in the bottom. This is what guys should look like, rather than that, even 30 years ago.
I don't think so.
but if you flip over any magazine, this is more likely of what you see. Girls like this stuff better than that. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. And even for women, maybe not for you, okay? But a majority, at least in this country, again, culture also affects how we see things. In fact, even for women, it's different. Like Anya, for instance, if she goes to the Caribbean versus somebody who is more full figure, hey, chances are somebody your friend with a full figure is going to get more male attention than you probably. Because in the Caribbean, men tend to like more fuller bodies. So who you are really is simply 4 different things we found out. We found out is how you perceive yourself, how other people or society perceive you, and how you think, how others perceive you, and how you want to be perceived. All influences make up for who you are today. The stuff you read in the news, the people you meet in the streets, how you interact with people, is simply how all this fits together with you. Now, Nick, you're an exercise guy. You talk about exercise all the time on your Toastmasters speeches. What does this guy do with exercise? Well, if you think about exercise, what goes on in your head? First thing, blurt out. Sore. Boring. Images, want some concrete images.
Sweating.
Challenging. Any concrete images? Like what kind of visuals do you see?
Sweating.
Sweating. Hot. Okay. Doesn't sound very interesting, isn't it? The tone of your voice sounds very solemn. Nothing exciting. In fact, this is how most people see exercise as being boring, monotonous, and it's not something that is supposed to be enjoyed. And this is what people think about all the time because this is what they think exercise is, but it's not really the case, really. And do we always have to isolate body parts or even to work out at a gym in order to stay in shape? Not necessarily. In fact, it hasn't changed. Times has not changed since for the last 50 years in terms of how we want ourselves to look and how we perceive exercise. In fact, this was a gym back in the 1900s. This is what exercise truly consists of. It consists of a lot of movements, exploring different patterns, and overcoming your own restrictions by using your own body weight versus simply gravity. And in fact, a lot of stuff for exercise is really more about overcoming your own obstacles, overcoming your own limitations. Like, as Bruce Lee once said, there is no such thing as a limitation. There's only a plateau, and plateaus can be overcome. In fact, exercise could be of any form at all. It could be just dancing. It could be also martial arts. It could be just simply skipping a rope. It doesn't cost anything. You just simply no space involved. And it could be just play. Just random play. Let people, kids, teenagers, or adults do whatever they want. You give them something there. Hey, why don't you come up with your own game right here? And they can come up with a lot of different ways to move. Let's say with this little beam right here on the ground. And as one of our neuroscientists and artists by the name of Bo Lotto, he did a TED Talk about a couple of months ago, from what I understand, is that how we perceive reality is simply based on our history. is basically our history and also defined by our ecology, how we as humans interact with our environment. And so for Toastmasters, this is how, where do you see yourself as being as part of this group? What you think you do, what other people think you do in Toastmasters. And so next time, when we think about how you perceive things, when you read, think about why you think of it that way before you even consider if something is real or not. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you for that speech. Perception.